First of all, it pained me that I can't pay anybody because I'm not a studio. I'm just like one person. But I also feel like this was such a special project and it spoke to so many people in different ways.
What if I told you it's absolutely possible to create an animated short film even if you have no money? Today, I speak with Mitra Shahidi, a talented Iranian-American story artist, director, and screenwriter who's worked on Pixar's Luca and Elio. We'll be diving into her journey creating her amazing short film Starling, about a mischievous star that falls to Earth on a mission. Where did such a personal idea come from? What obstacles did she face while writing and producing it? And how on earth did she pull it off with such a low budget? Mitra will answer it all. And stay to the end because she will reveal one crucial step in the production process that filmmakers often forget, but it's vital. So let's go! Hi Mitra, welcome to Write for Animation. I'm so excited about this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today.
So let's start with getting to know you a little bit. So you're now at Pixar. How did you get there and how did the passion for animation and storytelling begin for you?
It was a very long and winding road. I am originally from Iran. I was born in Turkey to Iranian parents. And since the moment I watched Fantasia, I was dead set on making animation in my life because my mom was a children's book illustrator and she was an artist. So I was always watching somebody paint and draw in my house. And when I watched Fantasia, then when I was a little bit older, I watched Sailor Moon and I was thinking there is nothing else I like. This is the only thing I like. Unfortunately, at the time in Turkey, there was not a lot of industry for animation. And there was always talk in my family to one day move to the US. One day we're going to move to the US. It's going to happen. And it took 18 years, but we moved and I pursued animation finally after many years of dreaming about it. And I went to the Academy of Art University and I wanted to do 3D animation, but ultimately I was making a film in my free time, and Academy of Art University was very gracious for letting me have a class dedicated to the film that I was working on. And that kind of sparked the passion of filmmaking for me. And I learned how to do everything there. But then I graduated and I said, well, I made a film and I couldn't really find a job that way. So then I started working at a game studio, being an artist. And I was not very good at 3D animation because that's not really what I focused on at school, even if my degree said so. And after a few years working in the game industry, I realized that, oh man, I really want to keep going with animation and the film and Disney and the Pixar of it all. And I was very lucky to meet Brenda Chapman, who gave me a shot to work on her film at the time. And I learned so many things from her and the team. And after that, I applied to Pixar to be an intern. And my good friend recommended me to the studio. Eventually, after some time, I was able to start as a story artist on Luca here. So it was very long, but it was worth it at the end. I'm very grateful to be here.
That's fantastic. We got the pleasure to chat with Brenda on here on Write for Animation, and it's one of my favorite interviews. She's lovely and also generous with her knowledge and time from back to early Disney 2D to her experience at Pixar. Really, really a great mentor to have.
Yes.
And of course, we had Enrico from Luca as an Italian ambassador. You were able to capture really the essence of at least my summers almost every year when I grew up. So that's fantastic. I got to your short film and it's absolutely amazing. It's an emotional journey. And I wanted to learn a little bit about your personal connection to the short film, which is something that always comes as a recurring theme in interviews, specifically with Pixar for sure, is the importance of finding something that is connected to you personally. Do you agree that's the way to go for a short film?
I agree for the most part. It makes it a lot more natural and authentic to find a personal connection to the film. But I also have seen films that are not necessarily based on lived experience, but it is absolutely beautiful and it's an observation or it's a poetry that somebody has written and somebody has taken that and found some way to connect to it. And yeah, definitely having some personal connection to the story is very important.
What was the personal connection for you in this particular project?
I had to make this story because I was processing the passing of my very, very close friend. And I've always seen her as a little kid. And because we met as kids and we grew up together, and in our most vulnerable times, when she passed, I just couldn't make any sense of it at all. I also kept having dreams about her, like she's visiting and she's telling me, oh, I'm right here. I'm not gone. Even talking about it gives me chills, but she really feels present in my life. I still feel her presence. I think about her pretty much every day. I mean, there is not a day that goes by that I don't feel her with me. So when I make this movie, I just wanted her to come back for one night. And that kind of evolved. It's no longer exactly her. I'm not like this star equals my friend, but it was just a sentiment of the spirits that affect us so much in our lives and how much they're still here, even if they're not physically present. And maybe the flick of a switch of the lights where you think of, oh, it just came on by itself, or the fact that the room feels so cold when you feel like there might be somebody coming to visit me. And I'm not very much a superstitious person, or I don't believe that much in like paranormal or anything, but who's to say? Like, we are just observing the 3D space in our regular life, and I am spiritual. So I wanted to honor my friend and honor anybody who has felt like their loved ones are still with them in some capacity and validate those feelings. And that's how it came to me. I didn't really have any other ideas that I was picking this from. I just kept drawing a star and I kept thinking about her. So it was born out of that.
That's beautiful. And it sounds to me that from the beginning, that's what I want to tell. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to pick between different ideas that they all sound interesting? You have this sometimes analysis paralysis of which one should I pursue, because it's a long journey.
All the time. I mean, it's happening to me right now. The way that like a project kind of bubbles up between like 10 other ones is kind of a gut feeling. It's not so much about which one do I pick and go for. It's almost like the other way around. Which one you end up working on, which one you're sitting down when you're like, oh, I'm going to work on a project. Which one are you drawing? Which one are you writing actively? And it's basically your body's and your brain's way of saying, this is the one that you need to work on. I actually was working on a bunch of stuff in the past few months. And one of them that I didn't think was going to be the one that I'm chasing organically bubbled up. The team came together in the right way. And now I'm working on it and I'm consumed by that project. So it's so much like which project wants to be done and which one do you find yourself working on. That's my way of looking at it. I don't necessarily want to actively force a project to be my next one, but I kind of let it happen naturally in a way. And the other ones are still in the back burner, or they're just like kind of waiting their turn, I guess.
I love the idea of thinking about projects as almost as characters. We chatted with Mike Jones, and he was sharing on Soul as an example, how sometimes he'll just let the character be and surprise him. How Joe Gardner didn't want to go to heaven or the afterlife and wanted to go back. And he was sharing about that as a surprise to him. Just let the character be. I love your approach of saying, let the projects as if they were alive to tell you, like, pick me. And then the other one is maybe saying a little bit. It would be great if you could guide us through the story, be divided in Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and share a little bit of the challenges as well you had to confront in each of the acts and story beat and Starling.
Yes, so Act 2 was a huge challenge for me because I was learning how to tell a story properly. I guess it's not my first film, but first film that I was directing in this capacity. Act 1 kind of wrote itself. I drew it almost in a few weeks, and it was so clear to me what was going to happen and how she was going to be summoned on Earth. And Act 3 also was very clear, although this story did go through some changes, because at some point I had this grandpa character, like grandpa star character, who was chasing her around saying, come back to space, what are you doing? And I was just like, this is a little bit too complicated. And I wanted to simplify the sentiment to, she was here, she is here, she's still here, and she just couldn't make it physically. I wanted to create this very clear through line of, she wanted to come down to hang out with her loved ones. And in the end, she couldn't be there physically, but she made sure to tell them she loves them by blowing out the candle. So Act 1 was obviously going to be her summoning. And I was very kind of careful to not create a lot of big gestural acting of her parents. It's a very sensitive topic. I didn't want to pretend like I know what it's like to lose a child, because that's not what the story truly is about. So I kept the acting to a very minimum. And all the parents do is they put the candle and they light a candle, and we go through the candle, and everything is like star coated, with the cake having like stars on it, with the chair having a little big image of star on it. So act one was very clear of, we're going into space now. And the act of lighting the candle activated the spirit, and the spirit is running down. There was actually a big complication in that story, because in act one, for the longest time, she was just missing the house. She was running, she was like, oh, there it goes, and accidentally falling somewhere else. But that didn't work logistically, because we were seeing the window from one angle, and then going back to it, the window is facing the other way. How do we fake that? So I didn't want to do that. It just didn't work. And it also didn't make sense story-wise. If you want to come back to Earth to see someone you love, you would not accidentally miss it because you got too excited. Obviously, none of us are spirits who came back, but just putting myself in the shoes of a character like that, I would definitely make it unless something happened. That's when we introduced the wind element, where she just got blown off course. But this change didn't happen until well into animation, which we had to cut 2 shots. I had to keep an open mind and take a deep breath. That's okay. We're going to just change it and it's going to work. So that was act 1. And when she lands on Earth, that was the break of act 1. And I'm just going to skip to act 3 for a second, because then I was thinking she will slowly lose her life energy until she gets to act 3, when the last act of blowing the candle is going to send her back to space in spirit form. So that was very clear too. I think that never changed from the beginning to the end of production. Maybe some of the shots changed, but the beats of that stayed the same. My good friend, actually, Paula Asadorian, gave me the note that what should happen is a little wind to the faces of the parents. And that really made the movie. I was so shocked that this was not already in the board. So I added that, and I was just, okay, now the movie came together. So thank you, Paula. Act 3 was when she goes back and her family no longer has their back turned to the window, but their face turned to the window, because now they know physically in the sky they can point. And that's what she came here to do. And that's what was her goal all along without quite realizing. So that was staying. Act 2 was this whole other thing where I was thinking, what happens? What does she do in Act 2 actually? How do I actually have her enjoy life the way she did when she was here physically and treat the world as her playground? This is something our production designer, Celine Yu, said a lot, where all the color choices and all of the music choices and her actions are full of joy. She's enjoying the world while she's trying to get home. But through that, we do see that her life wasn't long enough. She didn't have enough time to fully enjoy. And it's extremely sad to say it that way, but it was the reality for all of us. We get to enjoy life. We get to go dance one day, eat some good food, hang out with our friends. And before we know it, we're all gone. This was the figuring out of what Act 2 does. And one of the best advices I got was everything in Act 2 that happens has to one-up the thing that happened before. So it has to constantly escalate. And we didn't exactly know how to escalate the things that she does. The more fun, like that didn't really make sense. So what we ended up doing is we escalated the stakes of like, oh, she's losing more energy. And now she has to use energy to get home. And oh no, it's raining now. And she has to like jump on the umbrellas. And how is she going to make it? So we basically upped the stakes of her getting home and her losing power. And just image-wise, what we saw was more exciting as opposed to just her running around doing stuff. And our editor, Aisha Arkalı, helped a lot, because there was a moment where she was holding onto the train and just enjoying the rain. We all loved it. But our editor was like, listen, this is the moment after she realizes that she's losing power. In the midpoint, she can't be enjoying anymore. She has a mission. We resisted a lot. I resisted. I was like, oh. But now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, thank you, Aisha, for steering us in the right direction for real, where it just didn't fit into the movie. And now in this moment, she just sees other people. She's like, hey, and then kind of climbs on the train to stealthily go to her house. So it took a lot of iteration. Act 2 was my undoing. It was so long and it changed midway through production again. I chalked that up to just me learning how to do this at all. And it's really hard. I can't even understand how people do it in the feature form, where it's like, oh, if you have 90 minutes of movie and 70 minutes of it is Act 2, good luck. For me,
we chatted about it. We had Domishi on the channel, and she was sharing about the difference between doing bow and then getting to write the second act of Turning Red, and how
Yes.
extremely different that experience was. It's hard. We are not done yet, because we still don't know how she made the film on such a low budget. But before we continue, I wanted to quickly invite you to join the Write for Animation Academy, a community where you'll connect with other passionate storytellers who are all about improving their craft. We write together, learn together, and help each other thrive in the animation industry. When you join, you'll get instant access to our short film writing course, where you'll finish your own animated short film script in just 4 weeks. If you're looking to boost your animation career, join us today from writeforanimation.com/academy. The link is down below, and now let's go back to Mitra. Most stories are about one character that changes and has an arc as a protagonist. And then you have these beautiful stories where you have a character that, in your case, literally comes to Earth to make a better place. I'm thinking about Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio or Mary Poppins or other, where the structure is more, okay, this character is gonna be the agent of change in the world. And in this case, I see as a pivotal moment for the parents. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that. If at any point you thought, okay, what should the star learn? Or if you were embracing the idea from the very beginning that the character doesn't necessarily has to change completely.
I don't think the character that we set up necessarily had something that they had to learn. The only thing that I believe this character had to learn is I just need to tell them that I was here no matter what. Basically, she doesn't get what she needs, which is to hang out with her family. She basically lets go of being down on Earth by blowing the candle physically. And that was a change for her to be like, I'm leaving on my own accord. I'm leaving in order to tell them that I love them. And that, to me, is a pretty big change for the character also. But it's not so much that she was learning that, but this is just something that she chose at the end, and she would have not chosen it if she was just like for 1 second sooner. And for the family, they had their back turned to the window. They didn't know where she was. They were celebrating solemnly, and now they're able to see where she is thanks to the choice. So I think in this case, both the environment and the character go through a change. And I love this moments where, again, Celine, our production designer, said when we're seeing the family on the window and we pull out, we see all these other houses with lights at their windows. Everybody's having their own journey. Everybody's having their own life. And this is just the life of this little family and what they went through, what they are going through, and how they are connecting with love and life. And yeah, I really loved when she said that. So I feel like we didn't really spend too much time thinking what changes, but it just kind of happened naturally through the choices of the characters.
It's beautiful that you concentrate that pivotal moment in the climax of the film. Everything is compressed, and I love the simplicity of the story as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the value of simplicity? I think that's something that I see as a recurring theme, because you have everything. You have ticking clock that's super clear, you have clear midpoint, you have all these moments, and the journey is from point A to point B. Sometimes I believe that we overcomplicate things. That is the most common mistake that I see. Would you expand a little bit on the value of simplicity?
That's something I had to learn through making this film, because at some point, the character in the very beginning had a map, and she was looking at the city, going to the bus stop, comparing the map on the bus stop to her map, and she was, stealing a binocular to give to her. And like, it was a whole thing. But I remember at one point I sat down with Rosanna Sullivan, who made the Kimball, and I sat with her and I showed like my storyboard, and she just said, I don't know if you need a map. Can she just see where she's going? Can it just be one street? And I just sat there going, absolutely, it should be one street. And that kind of made me realize, oh my God, what am I doing? This is a 6-minute, maybe 8-minute film. Why am I having her trying to figure out how to read a map? I don't know what I was thinking. But after she said that, I just went home and I drew the street that turned into our little blueprint that our director of photography, Andy Jimenez, used to build the street in After Effects. That one street helped simplify it so much. And of course, there's a little turn on the street, which that happens on the train. But the fact that she lands, she looks, and there's the house, changed everything. And I'm sure in future it's totally different, but having a very clear goal, it sets the story up for when we're sitting like, is she gonna get there? We're just gonna sit here and watch this happen. And I don't believe every story should be that way at all, because I just watched this movie at Annecy called Toto-chan, the Girl in the Window. I don't know if you were able to catch it.
I wasn't in Annecy this year, last year, but I haven't watched that particular one.
That movie, I'm still not okay after watching that movie, because I was so shook to my core of how beautiful and how perfect this movie was in every way. And the goal wasn't clear. We didn't really know what she's gonna end up doing. There was a lot of foreshadowing of, oh, this is happening in the background. There's chitter chatter, there's talk. So we're worried because the stakes start getting high. If somebody who has not seen it, it's about the life of a little girl, and the backdrop is the World War. It's very, very visceral of watching this 5-year-old or 6-year-old go through life. And it's just the 3 years of this girl's life, and just beautiful characters, beautiful setup. Again, I don't believe every movie should be that way. I do believe in the Western filmmaking world, that's something that we use as like a shortcut to have the audiences latch onto something to then expect towards the end. You should see a gun, you have to fire the gun. These are the things that we have learned by watching each other's movies and hearing about stories from each other. And it's one way of making a film. In my case, it simplified it a lot. And in some of my other films, I'm also using that technique of, I know the goal right away. I'm not thinking about this. But not every project. In some of my projects that I'm working on, it's just somebody telling a story and you don't know where it's going to end.
I think something that makes a great movie, regardless of the approach to structure, is caring for the protagonist. And that's something I've seen. Some of Miyazaki's movies, they don't have a clear goal as much as we are used to in Western storytelling. But you care for the protagonist. What were some elements that were important for us to care for both the parents, that immediate empathy because of the loss? Maybe some little things you added to the star and how you see her personality.
I kind of meshed my own personality with my friend's personality, and this is just something I draw all the time with the little squiggly eyebrows and chubby cheeks. And this is what my go-to character design, if that makes sense. It wasn't hard to draw something that is adorable. And I also wanted the character to be playful and fun and funny and behave like a kid, like in a playground. So it wasn't really a big challenge to make us care for the character, especially when you see how much she's trying to do something. Like from the moment you see her run, like, I'm coming, like with the determined eyebrows, I was just like, I'm in. That was not something that was a part of a huge challenge. And the family, the parents, and Celine did it, based their designs on the stars' designs. Like, so we're going to have them be a family. They look like each other. The whole world is built like toys. Everything is very sweet. Everything is very childish, because as sweet and lovely this world can be, it's also a place of great pain. And I wanted to encapsulate that with the designs and not just be like, a grim story has grim designs. A cute story has cute designs. Like, yes, we know, but what is that in between? What is that reality that we're trying to tap into? So production design helped so much for that.
And it's beautiful. I watched it multiple times and I kept noticing details, the music, production design, everything is fantastic. What was the structure of the production? I'm more interested in the volunteering aspect, setting up the production and the budget, to the degree you're comfortable sharing that information, because that helps a lot of other filmmakers, especially from all around the world, that maybe they don't have the opportunity of a co-op at Pixar.
I got extremely lucky that I partnered up with the incredible Jessica Haidt from the get-go. We were friends on Luca. She was a script supervisor at the time, and I was a story artist. So we just clicked right away, and she and I just started working on this together, and she signed on to be the producer. We worked together with story as well. I would just go to her, be like, this is what I'm writing, what do you think? And she would give me feedback. But when the production started, when we said, okay, go, we're locking the reels. Of course, we didn't really lock it, but we locked the current version of the reels. Then she just went off to the races. We got our core team together, which was Aisha Arkalı as the editor, who happened to also be my friend, and Holger Leha, who was the animation supervisor. He was extremely talented, both in 2D and 3D. Andrew Jimenez, I don't even have to explain how talented these people are, but both Andrew and Holger worked together in previous productions. Like, they worked together on The Iron Giant, which is unbelievable. And Andrew Jimenez signed on to be the director of photography. He also did layouts, and he also did the music. And we were very lucky with that. Chris Landis joined to be our VFX supervisor, and Celine as a production designer. So we had our core group of people who were willing to put a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I can never pay them back for how much they have put their heart and soul in this movie. But the main leadership was from Pixar. Nobody was getting paid, obviously. We didn't even have a budget. Through the Pixar co-op program, you have a little bit of a budget. You don't really get anything nearly as enough of how much this movie would have costed. And Jessica and Holger and everybody started reaching out to people within Pixar, people outside of Pixar. I wanted to involve a lot of people from Turkey because this place is the setup is Turkey. And I reached out to everybody I was a fan of. I was following their work. I called around to see who knows somebody who might want to get some experience working on something like that. And working with somebody like Holger is not something you can do all the time. So Holger reached out to a lot of animation friends that he has known in his vast experience. And a lot of people said yes. Almost everybody said yes. And they joined, even to just do one shot or one background, two backgrounds. And everything was volunteer based. We always obviously said there's no deadlines. You do whatever you can, whenever you can. And people who wanted to contribute more really loved the story. And that's why they wanted to be a part of this team. And we kind of built our little lightning in a bottle studio. And we just would meet every 2 weeks or so on Zoom with the animators. We would just send back and forth emails. I would just write notes on TV Paint, and Holger would look at the notes. He would write notes. We would just check back and forth. Is this ready to be sent as a feedback to the animator? The kickoffs were very clear. We made sure every file is set up with proper perspective, nothing wishy-washy. The character turnarounds baked in the TV Paint. There were some frames drawn, like some character frames drawn for the layouts, and I would draw them. Holger would draw them, and we would kick off the animator that way. And some really experienced animators joined us, and some more student animators joined us. Holger kept it all consistent, which is not an easy feat, but he did it, and he did it all in his free time while working full-time at Pixar. We all did it that way, and we didn't spend any money on this film other than PR, obviously, because you can't do it otherwise. I don't think I can repeat this experience. First of all, it pained me that I can't pay anybody because I'm not a studio. I'm just like one person. But I also feel like this was such a special project, and it spoke to so many people in different ways. I'm very grateful for the experience that I've had. I think the next projects, I just want to find funding. And with my experience that I have, I want to be like, okay, we're funding it, we're paying people, and there's deadlines, everybody's making a living. So it was very fun and very challenging to do it this way. I'm very impressed with what Jessica and Holger and Andy and Chris, they were all able to pull off in a year and a half. It wasn't even that long of a
That's what
production.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I can only imagine. I've been in situations before where it's volunteer work and it's so hard meet deadlines. At the same time, understanding that if you're not paying, you cannot demand people to say no to paid work. Luckily, you have an amazing production team. I learned about the short film because I was seeing it all over social media. Maybe it's because I have a lot of friends at the studio, a lot of people that worked on that. But I think you did also a great job, and you just mentioned PR. Tell me a little bit about the importance of marketing and what was your approach to that?
We knew of a couple of people who were the best in the biz, and we were obviously aiming for like the biggest festivals and get this movie to be seen with a lot of effort, a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears. Our goal was to get it as far as it would go, and we got extremely lucky. By the first festival that it got accepted to was Tribeca, and it won Tribeca. So it was just like, oh my gosh, what? We're qualified for the Oscars? Let's go, you know? And when that happened, we're just like, okay, we can't not do this. You know, we have to find the best in the biz and work with them and see how we can collaborate together. And I got very lucky to be connected to those people, one of them being Benoit Bertha Stewart from Animation Showcase. And he was very generous and kind, and he loved the film, so he put it on the showcase. And that was like the beginning of a few month-long campaign because people had access to it over there. Even if we didn't really search specifically for distribution at that moment, it was accessible to most of the industry. And our approach was just getting it in front of a lot of festivals, a lot of professionals, people who happen to be Academy members. It's just the basics. I learned a lot through that experience. And our approach was like, let's see how far it will go. It was never like, we're going to win the Oscar, but it was like, what's going to happen? It's our first real film that we put together. It didn't get shortlisted, but I learned so much by just going to Animationist Film Festival. We screened at AFI. I went and did a lot of talks in different studios, and I connected with so many amazing filmmakers, and I learned so much about filmmaking and what it means to then have to take your film and just be like, hey, like, watch this, watch this. So it was a side of the coin that I was not familiar with. And now that I am, I'm like, making the movie is 70%, and then 30% is getting people to watch it, because otherwise, what are we doing here? Or maybe some people will argue like 50% is making the film, like 50% is. I feel like I was not very aware of what that meant until this experience.
That's beautiful. I want to end with, what would be the major lesson you learned that you bring home after this experience?
Major lesson is surround yourself with people who are better than you in everything. I feel like this has been the key to this movie. Everybody who worked on this movie is way more experienced than I ever was. And they were very good at what they did, and they were very passionate about the project. I had to go into labor by the end of this project. And even when I was in the hospital, my animation supervisor, Holger, and Andy were still working on shots. They were still putting their evenings and weekends and mornings, which I can never even understand how they were willing to do this. Like, I'm so eternally shocked and grateful for that. But they were such pros that the movie got done. If I was the only one just trying to advocate for it all of the time, I'm only one person, I would burn out and it will fizzle away. But it was just the sheer talent that was in the leadership that made this movie a possibility. I mean, the DCP happened. Like, the DCP is like the file format that you have to send to festivals. I didn't even do that. Jessica did it. She figured out how to go talk to the people, and we used the Pixar facilities, but she did the work requests and everything. So it was all a huge effort of a huge amount of expertise that was poured into this project. So I will never do anything alone. And I don't think I'm capable of doing that anyway. I know some people can, but I'm not just one of them. So for me, the biggest lesson is the moment you want to make something, make sure you have the right team for it.
That is beautiful. It's a great way to end. I think that this is why we love animation as well.
Yeah.
It's like such a collaborative medium. So Mitra, this is basically a masterclass. That's fantastic. I really love spending this time with you. I love the short film. I cannot wait for everybody to watch it.
Thank you, Pietro.
And so,
Thank you so much, Mitra. This was amazing. Making a short film is one of the best ways to kickstart your animation career. But here's the thing. I've seen so many new filmmakers sink their short films because of this one major mistake. If you want to avoid it, check out this next video where I break down what the mistake is and how to steer clear of it. I'm Pietro, this is Write for Animation, and I'll see you there.